The flashing red and blue lights washed over my locked gate in steady bursts, stretching long shadows across the pavement below. I stood on my porch with my arms folded, watching as two officers climbed out of their cruiser. My neighbor Karen was already in full dramatic mode, waving her arms and shouting for justice over what she insisted was some kind of community crisis. I already knew exactly how this would unfold before either officer even opened their mouth. She had pulled stunts like this before, but this time there was something different in her energy, something sharper, more frantic. "Sir?" the older officer called out as he approached, his badge reading Sergeant Doyle. "We got a complaint about an unauthorized barrier blocking what might be a public access road." I let out a breath, rubbing at my temple. "It's not a public road. It's my driveway, private property, and I'm fully within my rights to shut it off." Karen scoffed loudly, her tone dripping with outrage. "That's not true. This road has always been open. People use it constantly. You can't just seal it off." "People use it because they ignore property boundaries," I replied. "That doesn't turn it into something public." My words only fueled her anger. The younger officer, Rivera, glanced at the stack of documents sitting on my patio table. "Mr. Bishop, do you have proof that it's yours?" I lifted the deed and handed it over. "Right here. This driveway has been part of my private property since the house was built. Nothing changed, except that I finally got tired of everyone treating it like a public shortcut." Doyle skimmed the documents before returning them. "Then why the sudden issue?" he asked. Karen crossed her arms, her face reddening. "Because he blocked something people have relied on for years. What if there's an emergency? What if emergency crews need to get through?" I pointed down the street. "There's a perfectly open public road right there, Karen. This isn't the neighborhood's only entry or exit." Doyle sighed. "Legally, he's correct. If it's private land, he can limit access." Karen's jaw dropped. "Are you kidding me?" "This isn't the end," Rivera said. "With all due respect, sir, why now? Why close it all of a sudden?" I paused, because that was the question that mattered. For years, I'd tolerated people cutting across my driveway like it was a shortcut. But everything changed a week ago. While digging near the far end of my property, planning to expand my workshop, my shovel struck something solid, concrete, and not ordinary concrete, smooth, reinforced, deep. Curious, I kept digging until I uncovered what looked like the top of a sealed tunnel, buried beneath decades of soil and neglect. And once I found it, things started happening. That same night, my security cameras recorded something unusual. Two men, dressed in dark clothing, walking down my driveway. Not neighbors, not law enforcement. They stopped precisely where I had been digging, paused there, then disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, I discovered my fence had been messed with. The lock I'd personally installed had been cut and quickly replaced with another, but not by me. I went back through the footage, rewinding slowly, watching frame by frame. At 3:27 a.m.
Story 2. Two figures slipped out of the shadows, one gripping bolt cutters while the other crouched low, pressing his palms against the dirt where I had been digging, as if feeling for something hidden. Then, just as quietly as they appeared, they vanished. Later that afternoon, I overheard Karen speaking to another neighbor, her tone low but anxious. She wasn't just furious about the driveway anymore, she sounded rattled. I watched her from my porch, noticing how she kept darting glances toward my house, toward the exact spot where I had been working. Did she know something I didn't? I kept all of that to myself. Instead, I simply shrugged. I was tired of people walking onto my property, figured it was time to draw some lines. Doyle studied me with a long, thoughtful look, but stayed silent. Rivera, however, didn't seem convinced. "Mind if we check out where you closed it?" he asked. I motioned toward the gate. "Go ahead." The officers walked over, examining the heavy steel barrier, newly installed last week. Sturdy enough to withstand anything short of a battering ram. Karen hissed sharply, her voice cutting through the air. "He's covering up something. Why else would he suddenly block the driveway?" I faced her, lowering my voice. "Karen, I built that gate because I don't want anyone wandering onto my land anymore, and you don't get to decide otherwise." For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Uncertainty, fear, or perhaps something deeper. Then, right on cue, a black SUV glided down the street, slowing just slightly as it approached my house. It didn't stop, didn't linger, but I saw it, and I caught the way Rivera's jaw clenched when he noticed it too. That night, after the officers left and Karen stormed into her home, I sat in my workshop, going through the security footage yet again. The SUV had circled the block 3 separate times, once at 9 p.m., again at midnight, and then once more at dawn. I didn't recognize the plates, and something told me I wasn't meant to. Staring at the monitor, the back of my neck tingled. All week, I'd tried convincing myself this was paranoia, that the figures in the dark, the tampered lock, the strange worry in Karen's eyes were coincidences. But seeing that SUV creep past my home again and again, I couldn't lie to myself. Something was happening, and without meaning to, I had stepped straight into the middle of it. The next morning, a loud knock jolted me awake. My pulse jumped before I even sat up. I dragged myself out of bed, pulled on a shirt, and headed downstairs. Through the peephole, I spotted Rivera standing on my porch, arms folded, face unreadable. Not the start to the morning I wanted. I cracked the door open. "Officer, something you need?" Rivera didn't respond right away. Instead, he glanced toward the driveway, then back at me. "Can we talk inside?" I hesitated before stepping aside, letting him through. He walked into the living room like he'd been there before. I closed the door, watching him turn, lowering his voice. "I need you to tell me exactly what you found." My muscles tightened. "You've seen the paperwork. It's my land. What I do with it is my business." Rivera rubbed a hand along his jaw. "Look, I know what the law says, but I also know you're holding something back. And after last night, I need to know if you're at risk." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean after last night?" He didn't answer immediately. He slipped a phone from his jacket, swiped across the screen, and held it toward me. It was a blurry dashcam still image, captured sometime in the early hours. The black SUV sitting parked 2 blocks away. The timestamp showed 4:17 a.m. My jaw tightened. "You tailed them?" Rivera shook his head. "I was patrolling nearby, and my camera caught it. Looked suspicious, so I ran the plates. Nothing came up, not in any system." A chill crawled down my spine. "So, whoever is in that SUV isn't someone from around here?" Rivera nodded. "That's why I need you to tell me the truth. What exactly did you uncover beneath that driveway?" I swallowed, struggling with how much to reveal. I could pretend it was nothing, but that wouldn't protect me. I walked to the patio door, sliding the curtain aside, and pointed toward the far end of my property. It's not only a driveway, there's something buried under it. Some kind of structure. I don't know how deep it runs, but it's old. Very old, and someone sealed it for a reason. Rivera followed my gaze, his expression impossible to read. "And you exposed part of it? Enough to know it wasn't supposed to be discovered?" Rivera exhaled slowly. "I need to see it." I tensed. "That's not a smart idea." "And why not?" I turned to face him. "Because someone out there doesn't want it exposed, and they're keeping watch." For the first time, I saw real unease ripple across his face. He glanced toward the window, his hand shifting closer to his holster. "You think the people in that SUV know what you uncovered?" "I don't think. I know." Rivera stood silent for a long second, then drew in a breath, giving a single nod. "Then we need to move quickly. Show me now." I hesitated. Letting him in on this felt risky, but dealing with it alone felt worse.
Story. And if last night proved anything, it was that staying out of this wasn't going to be possible much longer. "All right," I finally said, "but if we're doing this, we're doing it my way. No backup, no calling it in, just the 2 of us." Rivera's jaw tightened, but he gave a short nod. "Lead on." As we stepped outside, the weight of unseen eyes pressed against my back. Whoever was keeping watch wasn't finished with me, and neither was I. I guided Rivera toward the rear of the property, every step deliberate, measured. The early morning air felt unnaturally still. Even the birds avoided this stretch of land. I crouched near the disturbed dirt, where I had first begun digging days earlier, pulling aside the tarp I'd thrown over it. Beneath it, the smooth concrete surface caught the faint morning light, untouched by decades. Rivera dropped to one knee, dragging his fingers along the seam. "This isn't normal." "You're right," I muttered, "and that's the problem." He pressed his palm firmly against it, frowning. "It's cold, and not from being buried. This thing is insulated, reinforced." My stomach nodded. "Then it's not just some bunker." Rivera rose, quickly, scanning the tree line, tension in his jaw. "I don't like this. Someone constructed this for a purpose, and they didn't expect anyone to uncover it." I blew out a breath, my hand running through my hair. "You think it's military?" "Could be, or not. Either way, you shouldn't be anywhere near it." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "You're starting to sound like those guys in the SUV. Just walk away, forget everything." Rivera met my eyes, and there was something different there now. Fear. "I'm saying you might not get to choose," he said quietly. "If they decide you're a complication, they won't hesitate to make you vanish." My jaw clenched. "Then I'd better find out the truth before they get that chance." Rivera glanced back toward the road, then at me. "If we're doing this, we do it carefully. No mistakes. No reckless digging. We figure out exactly what we're dealing with first." I nodded, pulse raising. "Then let's start figuring it out." We covered the slab again and headed for the house. Every crackle of leaves, every shift of wind made us both turn. The paranoia was settling deep into my bones. Once inside, I locked the door as Rivera checked his phone again. He frowned. "The SUV's still circling the block. They're waiting for something, or someone." I sat at my desk, pulling up the previous night's footage, rewinding to the moment the SUV slowed near my gate. My grip on the mouse tightening as I zoomed in. The windows were dark, but a streetlight flash exposed the silhouette of the driver, a man in a dark suit. I turned to Rivera. "This isn't some random contractor. They're watching for a reason." Rivera leaned over my shoulder, expression hard. "If they're monitoring this closely, they already know you uncovered something, and if they haven't moved yet, they're waiting to see what you do next." I exhaled, my heartbeat thundering. "So they want me to slip up." Rivera straightened, rubbing his jaw. "Exactly. The second you step out of line, they'll use it as justification, which means you need to stay sharp." I dragged a hand through my hair, thoughts racing. I'd planned to dig deeper, maybe pry up part of the slab, but now that didn't feel possible. A sudden knock on the front door froze us both. Sharp, loud, deliberate. My stomach twisted. We weren't expecting anyone. Rivera shot me a look, one hand drifting toward his gun. "Stay back," he murmured, moving toward the door. I didn't argue, watching as he peered through the peephole and tensed. He looked over his shoulder, lowering his voice. "It's Karen." I blinked, stunned. Karen? What could she possibly want now? Rivera hesitated, then cracked the door open. She stood there, shaken, her usual righteous anger stripped away, replaced by something I had never seen in her eyes. Fear. She glanced at Rivera, then at me. We need to talk. Now." I frowned. "About what?" Karen sucked in a shaky breath, stepping closer. "About them. The ones watching you." A chill slid down my spine. Karen had been nothing but a nuisance since this ordeal began, but now, standing there, wide-eyed and trembling, I realized something new. She knew more than she ever let on. And if she was frightened, then I absolutely should be too. Karen stepped onto my porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her usual righteous anger replaced by something I had never seen in her eyes. Fear. She glanced at Rivera, then at me. We need to talk. Now." I frowned. "About what?" Karen sucked in a shaky breath, stepping closer. "About them. The ones watching you. A chill slid down my spine. Karen had been nothing but a nuisance since this ordeal began, but now, standing there, wide-eyed and trembling, I realized something new. She knew more than she ever let on. And if she was frightened, then I absolutely should be too. Karen stepped onto my porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her usual righteous anger replaced by something I had never seen in her eyes. Fear. She glanced at Rivera, then at me. We need to talk. Now. I frowned. About what? Karen sucked in a shaky breath, stepping closer. About them. The ones watching you. A chill slid down my spine. Karen had been nothing but a nuisance since this ordeal began. But now, standing there, wide-eyed and trembling, I realized something new. She knew more than she ever let on. And if she was frightened, then I absolutely should be too. Karen stepped onto my porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself. We glanced at Rivera, who was watching her like a threat or a clue, maybe both. I think I have some idea. She shook her head fast. No, you don't. I motioned toward the living room, inside. She hesitated a second, then pushed past Rivera, entering my house. She stood near the front window, peeking through the curtain, as though expecting someone to be out there. Rivera closed the door, arms still folded. Talk, Karen. She rubbed her arms, voice quieter than I had ever heard it. I don't know exactly who they are, but I know they've been keeping an eye on you for a while. They don't like attention, and they definitely don't like people digging for answers. I narrowed my eyes. And how do you know that? She swallowed hard. Because I made the mistake of asking questions once, and they...
Story made sure I wouldn't ask again. Rivera stepped forward slightly. What do you mean? Karen hesitated, then finally exhaled sharply, shaking her head, like even speaking the words put her at risk. My brother used to work in real estate development. A few years back, his firm was hired to assess land values around here, including your lot. Everything seemed normal until he dug into old records and found something that didn't add up. A discrepancy, something showing your land was never properly listed as available for private sale. The following week, men in suits showed up at his office. 2 days after that, his workplace mysteriously burned down. He quit immediately, never mentioned it again. My pulse pounded in my ears. And you choose now to tell me this? Karen's eyes lit with frustration. You think I wanted any part of this? I knew what they could do, but after what I saw last night, I can't ignore it anymore. I looked at Rivera and saw he was just as unsettled. What did you see? Karen let out a shaky breath. The SUV, it wasn't just watching you, it was watching me too. I saw it parked outside my house at 2 in the morning, someone standing beside it, staring toward your property. And then they turned and looked straight at my window, like they knew I was there. Rivera rubbed at his jaw. They're tightening their grip. I turned to Karen. Why tell me? Why not stay as far away from this as possible? Her lips pressed into a thin line. Because I realized something. If they're willing to come after me just for knowing too much, then you're already in deeper than you think. You believe they're only watching you. No, they're waiting for you to slip up so they can act first. My stomach twisted, but my face stayed still. So what do you think I should do? Karen swallowed. You need to stop. Stop digging, stop questioning. If you push any further, they'll erase you. Rivera's jaw set. That's not an option anymore. Karen snapped back. Why? Because you're a cop? You think that protects you? I stayed quiet, letting the weight of her words settle. She was right about one thing. I'd been treating this like some mystery waiting to be solved, but it wasn't a puzzle. It was a warning, and warnings came with consequences. I met her eyes. You could have walked away. Karen's expression hardened. Maybe, but I know exactly what happens when people pretend nothing's wrong, and I'm not going to be next. Her admission hung in the air, heavy, sharp. Karen had been a nuisance in my life for years, but now, for the first time, she was scared of something bigger than both of us. I glanced at Rivera. We're running out of time. He nodded. Then we need to move now. I grabbed my keys, shoving them into my pocket. We're going to the site. Karen paled.
"Are you out of your mind? They're watching. If they see you digging—" I cut her off. "They already know what I've found. The only thing left is to see what's down there before they stop me for good." Rivera touched his radio, hesitated, then slid it back. No backup, no reports, just us. I nodded. "Karen, you don't need to come." She folded her arms. "The hell I don't. If I stay behind, I'm just another loose end." The three of us moved fast, slipping out the back door. The sensation of being watched clinging to our skin, but this time there was no stopping whatever was buried beneath this land. I was going to uncover it before they buried me with it. The night air was thick with tension as we approached the site. Karen stayed close to Rivera, her usual attitude replaced by frightened silence. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. Every rustle and shift of wind made me jump. The SUV hadn't returned, but that didn't mean we were safe. If Karen was right,
And I was beginning to believe she was. Then they were letting me make the next move, letting me open the door so they didn't have to. The flashlight trembled slightly in my hand, not from fear of what was down there, but from fear of what it meant, why it had been sealed, who wanted it kept hidden. We reached the tarp-covered section of ground, still slightly disturbed from earlier. I crouched, peeled it away, revealing the smooth, cold surface of the slab. Rivera knelt, feeling along the seam. Karen hovered behind us, shifting anxiously. I met Rivera's eyes, ready. He exhaled, not even close. I grabbed the crowbar, wedged the edge into the narrowest crack, metal screaming against metal. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to open. Karen stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Are you sure about this?" I shot her a look, not the time. Rivera joined me, gripping the crowbar, both hands. On 3, I adjusted my stance. 1, 2, we heaved, muscles straining. The slab shifted a fraction, a thin slit forming. Then the sound hit, a deep, hollow groan, like pressure being released. My stomach tightened. Karen stumbled back. "I don't like that." Rivera wiped his brow. "Yeah, well, join the club." I forced the crowbar deeper. We pulled again, harder. The slab moved another inch, revealing blackness below. Stale air rushed out, thick, smelling like something preserved far too long. My skin crawled. This had been sealed for a reason. Rivera shined his flashlight into the opening. The beam caught a metal ladder descending into darkness. Walls reinforced, untouched by time. Karen stared. "What the hell is this?" I shook my head. "No clue, but I'm going down." Rivera stepped back, shaking his head. "I'll go first. If something happens, you need a way out." Karen scoffed. "Yeah, because we definitely just walk away." Rivera didn't respond and began his descent, the flashlight bouncing as he moved. I gripped the opening, took a breath, and followed. Karen cursed under her breath before climbing down after us. The air grew colder the deeper we went. The walls, smooth metal, marked only by old, faded warning signs in a language I didn't recognize. My boots hit solid floor. I swept my light forward. A corridor stretched ahead, spotless, preserved like time had frozen. Rivera's voice was tight. "This isn't some old bunker." I nodded. "No, it's something else." Karen edged forward, arms hugging herself. "Do you hear that?" I listened, and then there it was, faint, mechanical humming. Rivera turned his beam toward a door at the far end, rough metal edges, the noise coming from behind it. He stepped up slowly, fingers brushing the handle. It wasn't locked. That meant someone had been here recently. My pulse hammered as he eased the door open. The room inside was small, cluttered with old computer terminals, thick cables running across the floor. A control panel flickered weak static. Karen gasped. "This was supposed to be abandoned, right?" I stepped in, brushing dust off one console. Everything was coated except one part, the keyboard. Someone had used it recently. Rivera swore softly, pulling out his phone. No signal. Big surprise. I touched the panel, feeling the faint vibration beneath it, meaning this place wasn't dead. It was connected to something. Karen backed away. "I don't like this. We need to leave." I ignored her, scanning the floor. Old papers lay scattered, ink faded but still legible. I picked one up. The script wasn't English. Rivera leaned in, recognition flashing. "Russian." I blinked. "Russian?" He nodded, expression dark. "This makes even less sense." Karen snapped. "What the hell is a Russian document under your damn driveway?" My pulse raced.
That was the terrifying question. Rivera wiped grime from another panel, revealing a faded insignia barely visible. His breath caught. That's not American, it's Soviet. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a forgotten military site. This was something older, deeper, deliberately buried. Karen stepped back, shaking her head. No, absolutely not. You don't just find a Soviet facility under your house and keep exploring. I faced her, voice low. We're already in too deep to turn back. A sudden clang echoed down the corridor, followed by footsteps. Karen's face drained of color. We're not alone down here. Rivera snapped off his flashlight, signaling silence. I tightened my grip around the crowbar, breath shallow. Whoever had watched us from the shadows wasn't just observing. They were here, and we had walked straight into their domain. My throat tightened. We came down looking for answers, but now I wasn't sure we would make it back up to tell anyone what we had found.